What's up, guys? It's Ben Weir, aka the Emo ANCAP. I'm stoked to be here tonight on this crazy Wednesday. It's a cold one out here in New Hampshire. But tonight I have a really awesome guest. I have Shane Cashman, who is a regular contributor on Timcast IRL. He just feels like he's on there like almost every week. He's an author, he's a musician, all around cool dude, loves the paranormal. I'm so stoked to talk to him. So I'm going to bring him up on stage, let him introduce himself. Yo, Shane, what's going on, dude? How you doing, man?
I'm good, man. How are you? I got a lot of snow everywhere. It's weird. After 2 years of West Virginia with no snow, I'm now shoveling myself out, which is bizarre.
Yeah, man. I mean, I don't mind the snow, but it's. I'm sure you missed it a little bit. Come on, let's be real.
I did not miss it.
No,
I
come
had
on. All right.
my last winter in New York a few years ago. We had 6 feet of snow. I had
Jesus.
no like snow plow, no blower, and I'm out there shoveling. I was just like, I need to be rescued from this. And I grew up on a farm in New York
That is
shoveling
that
forever.
is
So I
fucking
honestly
miserable.
I need to go more south. But it's been pretty mild here for sure. But
That
I don't
sounds
really mind. I like being out there. I put on some music and I shovel away.
right on. So, okay, Shane, introduce yourself, kind of tell everyone who you are, what you do. I gave you a little intro, but yeah, kind of tell everyone what's up.
Yeah, Shane Cashman. I'm a writer for Timcast. We call for the website is Scanner now. That's scnr.com. I've written two books for Tim, and they're both the Inverted World series. The first book, I kind of go into investigating serial killer stories like the one in Long Island, uh, paranormal UFO abduction stuff. And the second book, the most recent one, is my investigation into some lost Confederate gold in Georgia, in the town where the Confederacy happened to dissolve. And that turned into like I was supposed to write one article, and that turned into a like I think you have that book is 400 pages. It's stupid big. But because
Yeah.
I wound up seeing like UFOs and witches, having my life threatened. Some dude wanted to skin me like a dog. He said I have it recorded somewhere. It's beautiful. He had a beautiful accent from the bayou. So yeah, that's what I do.
Nice. Yeah, it was 470 pages. I just checked. It's
It's
wild.
ridiculous. That's
So,
ridiculous.
um, you got involved with Timcast. I mean, how long ago did you start contributing on that show? When did you get to know
Uh,
Tim?
on the show, it was probably October 21, but I've been writing for him since June or July of that year of 2021. And then at that point, I was just traveling from New York, where I used to live, down to like West Virginia, and finally found a place to live. I have a wife and two kids, so we all moved down, and very happy because we were looking to get out of New York regardless. So yeah, it's been a really crazy busy 2 years,
Yeah,
three
I
years
mean,
almost.
and so how did you guys meet? Like, how did that all come to be?
I I was just I let's see. I first found out about Tim probably like a lot of people seeing him on Joe Rogan doing the Twitter debate
Mm,
with Dorsey. And I was like, who the heck is this guy? So I started listening to him at that point. At that time, I was a professor and a furniture mover, and I was starting to listen to more like alt media, kind of getting plugged in a little more at that point. That's however long ago that was. And I didn't know him at all. And then one point, we were just my wife and I. I'll never forget it. We were kind of getting into a fight about money. We were so poor. I mean, I had multiple jobs. We were so far below the poverty line, just barely getting by. And we were fighting about money. And then I was like, all right, I'm gonna go do the dishes and turn on IRL, which at that point had just started maybe that summer because it was lockdown summer. And the second I turned it on, he said he was looking for a writer for a website he's starting to write paranormal true crime stuff, which is what I've been doing as
that's
a
awesome.
freelancer. So I was like, all right, cool. But of course, he like didn't say like where to submit anything. So I'm like going online, like trying to. He had some old website. I found an email, sent something in, never heard anything back. And I sent my like writing samples, and then so I was teaching that whole time as well as an adjunct professor, and I wound up quitting for various reasons because COVID was terrible. Colleges are horrible,
Wow.
for
Yeah,
all the reasons we know about.
I can only
And then I
imagine.
wasn't getting vaccinated, so all those reasons. So I quit. I had nothing. So I was not only below the poverty line, now I had no job. Pretty
Oh God.
crazy. And then 1 week later, Tim fucking Pool emails me and says, I want you to come down to West Virginia and hang out. I thought it was a joke. But I was like, I can afford to be pranked right now. I'll go. So I drove down, and sure enough, there's Tim. I walk into the house where he recorded at that point all of his morning segments, and I was hired
Great.
that day, and that was it. It's crazy.
That's great. Yeah, everything kind of happened so quickly for everyone in especially in 2021.
Yeah.
The whole world, it seemed like, was flashing before people's eyes, at least it seemed
Yes.
to most people, and
Absolutely.
for a lot of us, obviously we all see the results of that huge, ridiculous cultural shift. It wasn't really
Yeah.
so much that like people in the middle were splitting. It's the people that were already all the way out here. They just got
Yeah.
further away. You know what I mean? They just
Totally.
went further to
Yeah.
the right, further to the left, and it created these like crazy gang wars in 2021. And it made the
Oh yeah.
rest of us, people who can think for ourselves and, I guess would see ourselves more, as independents or whatever, kind of just stuck picking up the pieces and feeling lost and broken. And they're telling us, you have to, take this or else you can't have a job. I
Yeah.
lived in Sacramento when that shit was going down. You were in
Oh
New
wow.
York. So I can't imagine, like, you were probably dealing with the same exact bullshit that I was dealing with out there.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yep.
mean? And I worked construction, so I was not a teacher.
Yep.
I'm sure that was like a way bigger struggle. Like it took them like literally 1 week of me not working for them to say, okay, you're an essential worker again.
Right.
So
Yeah. Yeah. We learned really quickly how unessential teachers are. Like, we don't need them, And I saw that comment. I was like, I wanted to get out of teaching already, but then COVID just accelerated that, and I was like, I can't be in this world already. I see the teachers teaching like really terrible ideas to their kids.
yeah,
They don't take care of their teachers. The colleges, that is, the administrative departments are getting all the money while the tuition is going up and up and up for these students. And I'm begging for more classes, but as an adjunct, you're only allowed to teach like 2 to 3 classes at each college, and you're getting maybe 1,200 to 3,000 a class. So when I say like below the poverty line, like we were fucking poor as shit, because I was like, I'll work as a furniture mover making more. My wife is a waitress making more than me as a professor. And then I was like, as an adjunct, we were told, you just stick around enough, you'll get a real job. It's a real job. And then after like 8 years of me just suffering through that, I was like, yeah, this isn't for me. And around that same time, a little before me quitting college, I also kind of publicly quit wanting to even be a part of the like a publishing world, because I've been trying to get books published through all the big houses. And I had been published in like Penthouse and Vice,
wow.
and like places like that, like the Atlantic, places that at one point I looked up to, and now it's like they're just straight
Now you
trash,
look at
right?
Vice and like, what the fuck is this?
Oh,
I
it's
remember
so
I used
sad.
to watch their videos all the time, like
Same.
like on YouTube or whatever, where they're like,
Yep.
going out and trying ayahuasca in the woods. And I was like, oh, this is actually like good content. Some of it
Yep.
was, at least, some of it was
Yeah,
still cringe.
for
But
sure.
like they have definitely fallen. I think that like a lot of those companies, especially during COVID, like I don't know what the fuck went down there, but I don't even
Yeah,
hear Vice articles being shared around anymore. So
if I see a Vice article, it's typically old, and it's
yeah,
somehow relevant again, and it's like, oh, there's that Vice article from 10 years ago.
yeah,
But at one point, Vice was the number one thing I wanted to be a part of. I was
wow,
like, they're exactly what I wanted. That's like 10, 15 years ago, and I was probably publishing them 8 to 10 years ago, and it was awesome. But I can't imagine working for them now, and like having seen the way they all operate behind, like behind the scenes, is so discouraging to anyone who wants
oh,
to be
yeah.
like actually like creative, because the editors are like the ideological filter, so you can't really say
That's
anything even remotely creative,
It's so
because they got
wild
to
because
cut it down. It's terrible.
Vice was intended to be a form of alternative media. Like they
Yeah,
were the
dude.
ones that were supposed to be out there saying things you're not supposed to say.
Yep.
And it ended up basically going the way of the buffalo, just kind of like
Yep.
the music scene did, very much
Yep.
so. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Where
Same.
like People were
It's
afraid
just,
to speak their minds. You know, like
yeah.
you feel censored by your bosses. Like you can't even write an article without possibly, you know, I'm wondering if there's people that would like say things pushing the envelope to the point where like even their editors or their bosses and producers would just fire them. They wouldn't release the article and they would fire them. I don't know. But
Well, yeah, I mean, we saw what happened with New York Times with Barry Weiss,
oh yeah,
and
yeah,
all
you're
that
right.
stuff. So like even like the biggest of the names, they were, I forget who was writing it, maybe it was Josh Hawley or someone else, but they were talking about riots and how to take care of riots, and that editors board just turned on everybody. So that was kind of something I was dealing with on a much smaller scale, and if it wasn't being censored, it was, say I wrote a story about a guy, because I've been writing profiles forever, which is like another thing I do for Tim. Like I write profiles on all various types of people, whether it's like Carrie Lake or Kanye, and I've been doing that for years as a freelancer, but for like just random people I find on the streets. And there's this one guy who was a Teddy Roosevelt impersonator for a living. He's amazing.
Wow.
He looks just like Teddy. He sounds like Teddy. He knows Teddy so well. And I was a big Teddy fan. And I remember being drunk like 15 years ago, finding out about this guy. And he had a phone number on his website. And I texted him it was either New Year's or his birthday. And I was like, happy birthday, Mr. President. And he texted me back, which started his friendship. But anyway, I wrote a profile of that guy. And he had done something in college, which is some sort of like political, like fundraising group. And he was, maybe that group was 2 or 3 degrees separated from some other, like, it's not Soros, but it's like a big conservative name like Soros. Whether I can't remember, like the guy who did Fox or one of those people. And like, since the editors saw that connection, even though it was like 3 people separated, they had to take my sentence and fucking mutilate it to make sure everyone knew that this guy was 3 degrees separated from this like conservative think tank that people would know if they heard the name. And it was just like, for me, I'm pretty much a nerd about my sentences, and I like them to sound a certain way. And it was so discouraging to see them have to like mangle a sentence so people could see, like, just so you know, this person has worked with people who worked with people who worked with people. Like, I'm like, it's so sad. And then worse than that though is my final straw was I wrote a story about Marilyn Manson and music and pushing the envelope and why we need music even when times are really bad.
Yeah.
Like, we're talking about obviously gun violence in schools and stuff like that, and talk about Columbine, talking about Manson. And so it was all about why censorship is bad. That was the overall idea. And it just so happened that a school shooting happened like the day before I handed in that story.
Wow.
Handed in. And I was like, this is in a good, and that's not good, but like in a good way, it's like now this story will mean more to people, because it's like we're going to talk about why we need to confront these issues instead of censoring them and blaming people in the music world or whatnot. And the editors wrote back, we will not be able to run this because of like, the climate right now. And I was just like, that is so whack. Because like my story it only came from a good place. And I thought it would be a good way to start a conversation with people that I hadn't seen going on online. So that was my final straw. And I was just like, screw all this. And then I kind of went independent for a while and just kind of published myself on like Medium and Substack until I met Tim.
Well, I'm glad you guys got connected, because it seems like things are going pretty well over there. I mean, and I'm really stoked. I haven't been able to open up the book yet. I literally just came in the mail, but I'm really stoked to open up this book. So I guess like, let's get into that. Like, Inverted World, Ghosts of the Civil War, the search for Confederate gold in a town haunted by war, grief, ghosts, UFOs, and desperation, which is right here. Everyone should go get it on Amazon or wherever else you sell it. I'm really stoked. This is like stuff that is right up my alley. I love paranormal. I love UFOs. I love history. I was born and raised in Pennsylvania, so I was going down to like Devil's Den and exploring Gettysburg all the time. You know what I mean? Like, this is my stuff. So how did this come about? And like, what like inspired you? This is a 470 page book. You didn't just pull this thing out your ass. There's a lot of thought that went into this. So like, let's I guess tell us about the book.
Yeah, it was a life-changing book. I'm very, very proud of that book. I loved that book. Writing it was crazy, but like, let's see. So the first time I did IRL, I guess was October. That was to promote the beginning of Inverted World for Volume 1. And I said, if you have ideas for stories, hit me up. So we were getting ideas, and someone by the name of Clint Brantley reached out and said, I live in a town called Washington, Georgia, and this is where the Confederate gold went missing at the end of the Civil War. It's also where Jefferson Davis dissolved the Confederacy, and I think it'd be a good story. And so, like you, I'm also a big Civil War nerd. I grew up on like right outside of West Point in New York,
Yeah.
which gave that gave birth to all the generals on both sides, most of the generals on both sides of that war. And I, being a huge Civil War nerd, said, well, this is perfect because it's a mystery. And he had also said in his email that there's like an abandoned graveyard that they think a ghost keeps like touching the handle of the gate because it's always polished after 300 years. So I was like, all right, all this sounds good. I'm going. So I tell Tim, and at that point, I hadn't really done a lot of like on the ground reporting for Tim. I had prior, but not yet for Tim, except for the Long Island serial killer one. But that was a little different because it was like an internet thing. And he was like, yeah, let's go. So he shot me out of a cannon. Went to Washington, Georgia, thinking I'm going to get one like kind of long article. I tend to write these long, ridiculous articles. And I knew within 30 minutes of being in that town and meeting Clint, I was like, this is a way bigger story because I met Clint at the historical museum in the middle of this town, and I was meeting two historians. And when I get there, this woman shows up, and she's about my age. She's got these big glasses on, and I'm told not to tell her. When she pulls up in her car, one of the historians says, don't tell her why you're here. You're not here for the gold. And I'm like, what? Okay, fine. That's weird, but sure. I will play along. So she and the other historian walk into this beautiful museum, which is just like an old Victorian house. And within 5 minutes of that, about this girl comes screaming, running out of the house because she says the ghosts are just like too loud. Wow. And I'm like, what is going on? I was like, am I being pranked here? Like, what's up? But she was legitimately shaken.
Wow.
So I started talking to her, and she's like considers herself some type of witch, and we're talking about all these things, and it was interesting. And so I knew at that point all of like everything I like about his story was happening. It was like there's this weird mystery of the gold. I'm already meeting interesting characters because those two historians alone are really interesting.
Yeah.
This girl now who's like got this reality show where she's trying to find the gold, and when she found out I'm trying to find the gold, it turns into a whole issue. It's like her ex. I hope he's her ex at this point. He's the guy who winds up threatening me because I'm like asking her about like gold stuff, and he's this insanely abusive dude who the cops have to call, who the cops are called on, and they arrest him. So yeah, it's just like I was there for the like 3 days. My third day there of that first trip, in the backyard of Clint Brantley's house, and his family's had this house for before the Civil War, I believe it. That's how long they've had it. It's a big, beautiful farmland. And we're sitting down for dinner. The dad gets a phone call. There's a possum at the fire station. He's got to go shoot it. So his dad takes off. You hear the gun blast ring out through the woods.
Yeah.
We go outside, and Clint's looking in the sky. He goes, oh, there's a UFO, like super nonchalant. I'm like, what UFO?
Just
yeah, super
there.
nonchalant. It was like on the other side of the field, floating above the pines, and it kept going up and down and left and right.
That's wild.
And I was like, at first, I'm pretty skeptical of like everything. So I'm like, it's certainly a UFO. I don't know what it is, but it's weird. And when his dad comes back from shooting the possum, his dad's like, oh, the UFO's back. So it's like just extra nonchalant, which is more bizarre. His dad ends up telling me like his aunt had seen it. He'd seen it his whole life. It just keeps appearing in the sky. No one knows what it is. He says he's got a friend who's got a UFO landed in the yard down the road in the 60s. So it's like the through line of the book is like I'm looking for this gold because everyone's in this town. This town kind of exists on this gold tourism. Where's the gold? Everyone and God forbid you're an outsider looking for the gold like me with my Yankee ass accent. Thank God I had Clint because like if I didn't have Clint with me, whose family has been in that town before America was
They
founded.
probably wouldn't have talked to you, right? You're just another
Would
guy.
not.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. They would have not. I mean, there was a few instances, a few threats that we got. Clint got a few threats too.
Wow.
Some guy showed up to his house because we're looking for the gold. So with that, but anyway, his dad shows up. We're looking at the UFO, and his dad's like, "Go take a look at it through the scope on the AK. I forgot what he had, some AR. He's got this beautiful scope, and I'm looking through the scope at the UFO. I'm like, yeah, it's a UFO. I don't know, can't explain it. Then another one appears, and so what I was gonna say is the through line is the gold, but like every time I'd go down, there was another thing that would happen to me, like the UFO story. So like that's I forget if it's just a chapter or a few chapters, but I talk to everybody. I talk to people who don't want to talk about UFOs, but who are very religious Baptists, but they're like, yeah, our sister said it landed in her yard in the 60s. Or the police sheriff who's like, my best friend saw it. He said it landed over here. And he said, I have to be careful with names in the book, but there were people who did find a way into an abandoned house looking for a Polaroid that we were told existed of this UFO. We did not find it. I wish we did. But somewhere, all these people say this Polaroid existed of the UFO in one person's backyard. But yeah, it's just this bizarre town. It reminded me of like Twin Peaks, but in Georgia. So
Yeah.
I love Twin Peaks, or Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil takes place in Savannah, Georgia. And yeah, there's like a Bitcoin farm there. There's witch covens who are doing blood magic on battlefields, abandoned graveyards. I'm looking for the bones of like this lady who was hanged in Georgia, and the second lady ever hanged in Georgia. So yeah, that's why what I thought was going to be 5 pages turned into 475.
It's amazing, man. That's incredible. Like I don't think if I experienced something like that, like I would be able to shut up about it.
Yeah,
You know
I
what I
know.
mean? That's probably
Oh, dude.
exactly what you experienced. Like you're just like, I need to get all of this written down because
the book was writing itself. It was writing itself, and there's so much. Like that book could easily be 2,000 pages because
Wow.
there's so much I had to cut eventually because I'm like I don't want the reader to hate me, but because the book's also long, because I will hit these like weird tangents where maybe I met a family member who's directly tied to the Civil War, or I'm at a location that has an interesting history, and then I kind of allow myself to just go back and recreate that history as best as I can. And I did that by reading all these different books or firsthand accounts. And again, it's these people, everyone's unreliable. So like I'm trying to also make sure the reader knows, like, just so you know, just because this person said it at the Civil War doesn't mean it's totally true. Just like look at today, they try to tell you things are true and they're not. But I did a ton of research of like reading all these diaries and finding really interesting books from that town that you can't find anywhere else, and then doing like a broader research on the town, after that. So yeah, there's some chapters are just fully like, there's one I think that's mostly like a battle scene, or maybe there's two battle scenes actually, a Revolutionary one and a Civil War one.
Oh wow.
So yeah, I had fun with that book. I'm very grateful to Tim for letting me kind of go crazy with it.
And the Northeast is so rich with history. Like it is wild.
Yeah.
What is up here? Like I said, I'm from Pennsylvania, so
Yep.
almost every year I'd go to Gettysburg and explore the Civil War, Devil's Den, all this stuff. I know for a fact there's at least there's several spots there that are claimed to be haunted, with no surprise. But I know that there's one field specifically that if you like take a picture of this field, a lot of people get pictures of like ghosts or like apparitions of some sort that pop up. And I have, from a very young age, believed that ghosts and UFOs exist. Like I'm not the kind of guy who puts what is possible inside of a box. I think that's the problem, is that a lot of people put like what's possible inside of a box and like, oh, that can't be real. But like, no, this stuff is very much so real. Like this is like, there is a spiritual realm, and I don't care what anyone says. Like people who know, and maybe it does take a little bit of faith if you haven't seen it to believe it. But like, more people should have faith in this though. Cause I remember as a kid, some situations where I very much so believe that I saw a ghost at a very, very young age. And I had conversations with a ghost at a very young age. And when I would tell my parents and stuff, they're like, you're crazy. Like you have an imaginary friend. You know what I mean? Like
that's funny.
I'm not schizophrenic, I promise.
Right. It's so funny. I had a very different childhood because I grew up in a house that was built in the 1700s,
Mm.
and this is right outside of New York, and we knew something was up with that house, you know. And I write about it in the first Inverted World book because we found out a boy was shot dead in that house by his
Wow.
brother on Super Bowl Sunday, 1979, and so my parents are always like, this house is filled with ghosts, but they've
Wow.
so far been really nice ghosts. So in the same way that Clint and his dad were nonchalant about the UFO, my family's always been nonchalant about ghosts. So
See,
it's just never been
and
like,
for
you know, a
me,
thing.
I was raised in a very fundamental Baptist Christian home. So they're like,
Right,
this is not real. This is, if you think
right,
that it's Satan, it's demons, whatever.
right.
And you know, I have a house right now that was built in 1847. I just finished doing a lot of
Awesome.
work on it. And from the
That's
first
awesome.
day I walked into that house, I was like, something feels a little bit goofy here. I
Yep.
never had a ton of experiences except for like maybe doors shutting. I never saw anything like apparition wise, but I will
Right.
say that I do think there's something going on there because you know, you walk up to the house, it has a historical plaque on the house.
Yeah.
But when I reach out to the historical society about like its history, because I'm just a nerd, super
Yep.
autistic like that, trying to figure out all of its people and stuff. Um,
Hell yeah.
you know, they actually told me the house was built in 1847 and it
Mm.
was one of the first churches that was built in my hometown. So
Oh,
people have been
wow.
baptized in my house. People have been
Sweet.
born and have died in my house. So like
Wow.
everything started to just make sense. I
Yep.
was
I
like,
love that.
you know, you like I have original like newspapers from the 1800s that are framed that I found inside the house that I'm not removing from the house. They're going to stay there. You know,
Yes.
paintings
Good.
from the 1850s in the house. And you know, like I'm trying to keep it looking exactly how it was intended to look.
Good.
You know,
That's
but
good.
I don't want to like disturb it too much. But like yeah, people, I just think need to have a little bit more faith with this stuff. And
It's
if you
funny.
haven't experienced it, like you know,
Oh
listen to
yeah.
people who have. I'm telling you,
There's definitely something's happening, and we're
yeah,
not fully aware of everything. And that's funny. You reminded me of a rather large part of the book, the beginning, parts of the beginning and the end, are me dealing with a man who's a medium. He claims to be a medium, and he's extremely Baptist, and you know, a lot of his family is not happy with it, and but other parts of his family are fine with it. But he's plugged into something. You know, I don't know what, but he definitely does know things. Sometimes I was wondering if it was parlor tricks or not, and he maybe has like parts that he can do or can hear, and then other things he's kind of faking because he's
yeah.
weird. And when I asked him, I'm like, how do you have this ability? He goes, I'm a product of incest. That's what he said. And I'm like, okay, all right,
Wow.
perfect, yeah. Uh, so he was like, my something happened with me chemically where I had this
Wow.
ability. I've always had it, and I
I did
talk with
not
dead
know
people all
that
the time.
fucking your cousin led to telepathy, but
It could be a cope. It could be a cope. Uh, but he was saying some things that other people in town who don't know him were like, oh yeah, we've experienced that too. And he also had like a problem with his doll.
mm,
Again, this happens to take place in that house I was just telling you about earlier with the girl screaming.
yeah.
I brought
Wow.
him there to try to talk to some ghosts who I'd been told lived there. There was a guy burned alive in that house as well at some point. So I was like,
Holy
I'll bring
shit.
him there. Yeah, that house has crazy stories. So he told me a doll was really haunted, and I'm just looking at the doll like it's a creepy doll, but okay, maybe. And he does this weird thing with his hand and like a pendulum and a crystal. And I didn't really think much of it. He's a nice guy, and I do think he's plugged into something, but other things I think he's like trying a little too hard. Anyway, I come back down to Georgia like a month or two later. I'm staying at a hotel that's in town. I'm looking for like a graveyard that's supposedly in the cellar. And as I'm going, I find like this trap door where the girl tells me if I go down to the floor, I'll find the graveyard. And as I'm going down there, she's like starts talking to me, and I find out she's another one of these witches. I keep finding witches in this town.
Wow.
And so we and her start talking before I go down to the graveyard, and I tell her about the museum, and she's like, "Oh, when I was in like first or second grade, I went on a field trip there, and there's a really creepy doll in this room upstairs, and it flew across the room. I was just like, that's hilarious.
No
Because
way.
a guy told me that that thing was haunted. Um,
Wow.
and they don't know each other because that guy is not from that town. And I asked her, I was like, do you know who this guy is? She's like, I never heard of him. And they could
Wow.
all just be playing one big, amazing prank on me. Because I would go down there and things would happen like this all the time. And I was like, this town is pulling my leg or something. But every time I'd go down there, every time I turn around, there would be some weird like synchronicity like that. So bizarre.
And it would have gotten away with it too if it wasn't for you crazy kids. Just kidding. No, sounds like a Scooby-Doo movie or something.
It felt like it.
Dude, honestly, man, like that is wild. And I mean, like I know you're from the Northeast as well. Like if you haven't been to like Salem, Mass, crazy shit goes on over there.
I haven't. I want
Dude.
to. I actually, I
Yeah,
don't know why I haven't. I should.
it's not too far away. So if you ever make it up here, let me know, dude.
Awesome.
We'll go
Yeah.
freaking explore, whatever.
That'd be sick.
So real quick, I'm going to give a shout out to one of the sponsors for the show, which is Blood of Tyrants Wine, the official spirit of 1776. Are you looking for a nice night in while sipping on the blood of your enemies and supporting the destruction of the tyrannical state? Look no further than Blood of Tyrants Wine. A nice Merlot distributed by activists you know and love. Blood of Tyrants.wine is the place to go. Use promo code FSM to get 10% off your first order. That is bloodoftyrants.wine, or click the link in the description below and use promo code FSM for free speech media. Sweet. All right,
That's one of the best ads. That's one of the best ads I've seen. That's amazing.
Dude, I love those guys too. They have this like energy drink that's like a raspberry tea as well. That's like I don't know. Definitely gets my day off on the right foot for sure.
That's awesome.
Good people. So I kind of wanted to like shift because like you are a very awesome and interesting person. You're also like very deep in the music scene. Obviously, that's what this show is kind of all about and how it started. Very passionate about that. I know you are too. So first of all, I kind of want to like start with the state of the music scene culturally, which is pretty weak. I mean, I had hoped that maybe the last couple of years would have seen some kind of like uprising of some kind of punk rock, hardcore mentality. And maybe it did in some circles, but for the most part, I'm going to shows all the time. I didn't see the last couple of years spark any kind of like anti-government change whatsoever. Most people just fucking complied, which is sad to see. But you kind of like dabbled in more of like a hardcore and metal scene, which I think is significantly more punk rock than the punk scene these days, to be completely honest. I'm a punk guy. I love punk rock. But the hardcore scene has this like in the metal scene, they seem to have this like more anti-government outlook on things and anti-authoritarian look on things, which I appreciate the hell out of. I love metal. I love hardcore. And I love punk still. I still do, even though they're a bunch of status fucks. But what do you think about this whole situation? Because it's certainly different than when we were growing up, or is it?
It's weird. It's just we saw punk rock, like not just the genre of punk rock, but just like the attitude of punk rock die during COVID. That was so upsetting. And I kept joking around to people that Trump was like a punk rock president just because this is pre-COVID, mind you. Because I'm like, he's just pissing off everybody. I thought we'd like this. I'm like, you don't have to like the guy, but like, it's kind of hilarious that he's such a dick to everybody. And I thought we'd like that. So, and I was telling that to a lot of my friends from the hardcore punk metal scene who would all of a sudden become like, just they love the establishment so much and we have to do everything they say. I'm just like, this is not what we're about. But that was really discouraging to watch. And then it made me like really double down because I'm like, someone has to like in my little scene before I was, talking or had any platform or whatever. I'm just like to my friends, what the fuck are you thinking? Like, why are you telling me I'm a bad person now? We'd been anti-establishment forever for very good reasons. And now all of a sudden, because you're afraid of something you don't even understand yet, you're going to listen to these people. Like, dude, come on. Yeah. So that was really upsetting. And then I did notice when I was writing as a freelancer, I was not writing anything politically at all. I just didn't want to. I didn't really care to. And during summer of COVID, the riots, all that stuff, I just had enough. And having all those conversations, like I'm telling you, with all my friends, I kept compiling like ideas that I needed to put down. And I wrote this like ridiculously long poem. And I was just like, I'm just going to write this, and I'll say my piece, and I'm done. I'll go back to doing what I want to do, which is like historical or true crime shit. And I lost a lot of friends, but I did notice that a lot of people who reached out and were supportive were people who were like deeply in the hardcore scene. You know, people who like grew up listening to Earth Crisis or
dude,
Hatebreed.
I fucking love Earth Crisis, man.
So, they were like,
I just saw them not so long ago.
Oh, I fucking love Earth Crisis. So that was heartening. And you know, we had learned how to like be unafraid at shows. We talk about this a lot. Me and my friends, like, shout out to this guy. He runs Wolf Brigade Gym up in Rochester. And he'd been attacked by Antifa years ago for saying some shit. And he's just a tough ass dude who like swings like maces around. And you know, going to hardcore shows. We'd just be like, he's so badass, but we'd be like, we grew up getting our literal bones broken at shows.
Yeah.
Like we built up a strength against like this outside world and a real individuality and a purpose, and like the strength in this against this like stupid weak society. To now see all these people like crumble
it's wild
because of this fear of COVID was wow. But yeah, I mean, I got a lot of support from that scene in particular, for sure.
The first festival that I went to since COVID happened was Furnace Fest, and that was in Alabama just this last year. I think we actually interacted on Twitter at one point about it. But you know, what was crazy to me is like I said, like punk rock is my shit. I fucking love punk rock, but seeing the hardcore and the metal bands at Furnace Fest, you could feel a fucking shift. There's like a different energy that's going on between these two things. I did not feel the punk rock energy anymore. It felt like a show. That's what it felt like. And I still love and appreciated those bands. I loved watching them. But then I would go and I would watch like Advent or Jesus Piece, Norma Jean, you know, like freaking Hatebreed, Terror. It's unmatched energy, and people are out there. You know, obviously it's a blast to watch that type of music in general, but I will say, you know, it feels different. Those guys are up there and they do like almost preach a message to people still. They still are up there talking about what they believe. And, you know, I even heard a couple, you know, talk about like saying, fuck the government, you know, and they weren't saying fuck the government because they're, you know, anti all government, because that's absurd. It doesn't happen really a lot in the punk scene anymore, or in the hardcore scene even. But like with punk bands, they don't do that shit anymore. I mean, we just had Green Day changing the lyrics, which to be completely real, I don't give a fuck. Changing the lyrics from like redneck to MAGA, from the redneck agenda to MAGA agenda. I don't care. If there was a words that could be switched out, maybe redneck and MAGA do switch out just fine. I don't fucking care.
The way I feel about Green Day is the way I feel about like Whoopi Goldberg saying something. It's like I just don't care.
This is the Green Day for advice anyway.
Seriously, we always knew they were bitches, you know. And I honestly was never really a big fan of Green Day, but I just the aggressive, crazy, loud music. It's really hard to dial that in, and it's really hard to fake it. And when you see bands like Norma Jean, I remember seeing them live. They opened for like Glassjaw when Glassjaw was touring. I think it was Glassjaw. I could be conflating two shows, but I'm pretty sure it was Glassjaw. And this is like Worship and Tribute era. It was just like
Almighty Norma Jean, man.
Oh, it was great. And you know, the Norma Jean, those guys went. What's his name? Josh, the singer, the original singer, Norma Jean. He went and started the Chariot. And if you thought Norma Jean had a crazy stage presence, the Chariot was.
I saw the Chariot play in a church basement when I was a teenager. And that shit was wild, man. I've never seen a show like it. I hope to God that they do just one reunion show. I will die.
If people are interested and they haven't heard or watched the Chariot, they should go look up those like final tour videos.
Where they were like on the roof and shit.
Yeah. That's like, those are my favorite shows. Those are the kind of shows I went to since I was like 13, 14 up until honestly right before COVID. Not as
Mhm.
regularly as I did between 13 and 25, 26, but right before COVID happened, I was still in New York and went to Brooklyn to see Daughters play. And Daughters is one of my favorite bands of all time. I love them. They started as the Sunsets, became Daughters, and they're just insane. The
The
singer
only
is one of
bands
my
that
favorite
I've
singers.
seen match the energy of the Chariot since I saw them, and maybe I'm living in nostalgia a little bit, but I don't think so. The Chariot's the best band I've ever seen live.
Yeah.
Um, is Let Live. Jason Butler is wild,
Okay, I
who's
never
also
saw
with
them.
Fever 333 now. And
Oh
also
yeah.
Showbread. Showbread is insane.
Okay.
I fucking love
Okay.
Showbread. They're my number 2 favorite band of all time. They're
Sick.
phenomenal.
I
But
don't know them. I'll look them up.
yeah, dude, Showbread's great. But yeah, like, but it is crazy. Yeah, like I said, going back to the whole cultural thing, um,
Yep.
that we've seen this kind of weird shift happen. This is just has not been that long. It has been like maybe 10 years,
Yeah.
15 years, right? Since we were kind of like I started playing shows when I was 20. I'm
Right.
35, almost 35 now.
Right.
So, and I'm not sure how long ago you were playing, but I'm assuming it was about 10 years ago, at least, right?
We were probably done 10 years ago. Well, I'm 38. We were done 13 years ago. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So, like just the shift that's happened over this time, it's really disheartening to me because there's no music festivals anymore. Vans Warped Tour doesn't happen. I used to love going to Warped Tour every year, seeing a bunch of my favorite bands all at the same time.
Yeah.
There are some big festivals still, obviously, but um, I don't know, the whole how how people sell music these days and the amount
Yeah.
of touring that actually happens is much more at a minimal now. And I
Yeah.
100% blame COVID for that, by the way. A lot of
COVID
venues
killed
shut
it.
down.
COVID killed it. We got out, like, I don't think we were even on Facebook. We had MySpace. I used
Oh,
to book
hell
our
yeah. Do
tours. I
you
booked
remember
our tours
Pure
through
Volume?
MySpace. Oh, of course I remember Pure Volume. Yeah.
Yeah.
Used that a lot. And those websites were amazing because we didn't do the whole country, but we did a good portion of the country when we toured. And it was all through MySpace, and it was amazing.
Yep.
Getting your guarantees, all that stuff. And yeah, dude, I miss playing shows a lot. I'm always curious how it'd be today. We were very, very antagonistic. I used to try to do things. I don't know why. I don't know why, but I used to really enjoy like making the audience hate me. And
Yeah.
I would do ridiculous things like just how I would dress or things I would say. And when you're playing those types of shows,
I mean, that's
you
punk
wind up
rock,
at some
dude.
bar. Yeah, but like it was detrimental to to the rest of the band because they're like,
Oh,
why is everyone hating us? But it was fun, and I couldn't help it. But like we would go to shows, and there would be people at the shows. You'll play those bars. And there's a bar in the background. There's people at the bar who did not come to see your hardcore band play, but then they would be like my favorite people to talk to, from the stage.
right.
Because I'm like, you already hate me. I'm going to make you hate me more now.
Right.
And so I'll just keep digging deeper. So like, I don't know how it is these days. Like, if bands do they have fun being antagonists? All my favorite bands were like antagonists on stage, like
I don't.
Dangerous Gay Plan,
Mm.
Daughters, kind of like. And I'm not a big Gigi Allen fan, but I do appreciate what
He's from
Gigi
New
Allen
Hampshire too.
used to
He's
do.
from
Oh, I
Lancaster,
didn't know that.
New
No
Hampshire, and
shit.
his brother Merle comes up here and still plays
No
shows
shit.
with that project. Gigi Allen was
Huh.
wild. He literally shit in his hand
Huh.
and rub it all over his chest.
Yes, he did.
Fucking insane, man. But that there's not a lot of that happens. There's not a lot of unique
I
shit
can't
that's going
imagine.
on in the scene. I'm not saying just about shitting in your hand and rubbing it on your chest. There's not a lot of unique shit that's going on that's making bands stand out these days. A lot of it has become very monochromatic. I can only think
Yeah.
of a couple bands, and to be real, I'm not huge on Sleep Token. I think they're pretty good. They're talented, but like they
Yeah.
have like at least a niche and a scheme that's going on. Like their whole idea is like they're like a cult basically, and
Yeah,
they have like a god or something, and they're all masked up, and it's we're not talking about
they're
Slipknot here. So
yeah they're interesting. They're interesting to me. I think they have some really good songs or some really good parts in the songs, and I like their production.
yeah,
And but like,
yeah, but it's
dude,
different. That's like
yeah,
that's really one of the only
Slipknot.
things I can think of,
Yeah,
off the top of my head at least.
because
That's trying to
even
be different.
Slipknot has been watered down. Slipknot used to be
Hmm.
a terrifying presence, you know. And I'm not saying it all has to be like that, but when we're talking about like hard, heavy music on stage,
Yeah,
I I genuinely miss being in a show and being afraid of the band and being afraid of the audience. Like
yeah,
I had literally had Dillinger Escape Plan. They were playing 43% Burnt. It was the last breakdown of the song, and the dude jumped out off the balcony above me at the Chance in Poughkeepsie and broke my knee. And it was awesome.
yeah.
It was awesome. I didn't give a shit. Like I was just like, I'll go sit in the back when my friend's done watching the show. He'll drive me to the hospital.
Yeah,
I was in no urgency. I was used to it at that point. At that point, my friends and I, we'd broken noses, broken bones. We'd gotten in fights. We'd seen our friends break
yeah. If you
doors
don't
off of
leave with
buildings
like
and swing them.
blood, then it was like, it was
Yeah, and it just it sucks because like it was fun. I'm not saying everyone needs to experience that, but it certainly like developed a certain strength in people to then go out into society and be like, your shitty comments on Twitter are not going to do anything to me because I
Right.
literally was getting punched in the face or
Yeah,
had literal doors swung at me for years
yeah,
in a shitty bar with like it smells like a urinal cake and the floors are sticky, and your favorite band just broke your best friend's nose.
yeah.
Like that's why I think a lot of those hardcore friends of mine who were reaching out after I posted that poem during COVID were like, yeah, fuck this, because that was our version of just like swinging back, because
Yeah.
this is fucking ludicrous,
Speaking of favorite bands, like one of my favorite bands is Norma Jean, and I remember when I was at Furnace Fest, there was an emo night, and I love emo night. Like I'm the founder of the emo caucus of the Libertarian Party. We just kind of have fun with it,
Oh
dude.
yeah,
I've got
that's
we just
awesome.
fuck around a little bit. But I go to emo nights. I've DJ'd a few. I DJ emo night at Pork Fest up here in New Hampshire. But freaking the singer from Norma Jean, Corey, I think his name is the newer singer.
Yeah, the newer
So
guy. Yep.
Corey, he came out and he opened up his set. He DJ'd emo night. He opened up his set with Counting Worms by Knocked Loose, and the whole
Oh
floor
wow,
split in half. It was
wow.
insane. Everyone starts ripping shit up, and then he goes straight from that to
Sick.
Ain't It Fun by Paramore. It's the funniest shit I've ever seen, dude.
Perfect. I like both those things.
Yeah, it was the best thing ever. But speaking of favorite bands, tell me who some of yours are, man. Like, who's your favorite bands, musicians, people you look up to? Who did you grow up on? Who are your favorite bands now? Shit like that.
All right, sweet. Man, it's so hard. But growing up, I was big into metal and rap. So it was like I got into Busta Rhymes fairly early on, and then he
Limp
was like
Bizkit, combining the two.
exactly. Busta was like my gateway drug into like the new metal-ish metal scene, because he was kind of screaming already, and that got me into Limp Bizkit, Korn, Slipknot, all that stuff. And then from there is when I kind of transitioned into the more hardcore stuff. I got like Dillinger Escape Plans, Calculating Infinity, Earth Crisis with the Gomorrah Season Ends on it.
Yeah.
And like Blood Has Been Shed, which is the band that would become more or less Killswitch Engage, with Howard Jones singing. So that was like stuff. Every Time I Die, all those bands. But like my favorite ones would be Beach Boys are like my favorite. I love Beach Boys. I love Brian Wilson.
No way, dude. That's like literally one of my favorite bands of all time.
Sick.
Did not expect that
awesome.
to come out of your mouth. I love the Beach Boys, dude.
My wife walked down the aisle to God Only Knows, and both of my children were born to God Only Knows. It's the most beautiful song ever written. It makes me cry just thinking about it. It's amazing. I love that song. So Beach Boys, and then like I said, Daughters. I love that band. No one knows that band. Maybe I don't even know if you do. I fucking love
I'm not
that
familiar.
band.
I'll have to check them out.
I've seen them, and they've changed a lot. Like for the most part, same members, but they started off as one of those like grindcore bands. They were called As the Sun Sets, and it became Daughters. Canada Songs is a great record. It has like 10 songs. It's maybe the album maybe 8 minutes. But they like evolved into like just a very bizarre, hardcore-y kind of like Nick Cavey sounding band.
Yeah.
Their last record's amazing. So then I'm a giant Kanye West fan. For
Dude,
me, he's one of my favorites.
you are
of all
just
time.
you just dropping the bangers, the good takes. Kanye West is one of the best producers of hip hop of all time. I fucking love Kanye West.
Yeah. Yep. Kanye killed rap because rap really has a hard time going anywhere else after what he's done. And in many ways, I mean, it's like the production he did early on for Jay-Z or like Ludacris, and then his own stuff, and then 808s and Yeezus and Twisted Fantasy and
Man,
Donda,
dude,
like all this
College
stuff.
Dropout, dude.
It's unbelievable.
Congratulations.
He's the greatest.
Oh, so good.
He's the greatest artist, in my opinion, the greatest artist of all time, hands down. You know, that was the craziest weekend of my life, was getting to do that story with him, and like doing the weekend in LA with that guy was crazy. To talk awesome. Music like this, just talk about all this weird shit.
Dude,
that was mind blowing.
We were just meant to be friends. I think that's fucking great. I love that.
Dude, those, I guess those are the main ones. I'm sure I'm forgetting someone, and I feel bad. But I listen to all those bands a lot on YouTube.
So the other week on Twitter, you posted a clip of your band, and hopefully this translates well onto the podcast. I was gonna play a quick clip of that. What was your band's name?
We were called Mabus, Mabus.
Okay, all right, cool. So I'll share this real quick. We'll get this thing going. Let's see here. All right, I'm gonna start this clip over right here. All right. Dude, I love that.
Thanks, man. That was
y'all were
crazy.
Wild, brother.
and I had just come back from another knee. My other knee was broken from my own show. I broke my other knee singing our last song at another show, like maybe 4 or 5 months prior to that one. So that was like nothing. You know, we used to be fucking stupid on stage.
Well, you posted another clip of you like hanging on the ceiling and shit. Like, oh man, it looked like you guys had a good time for sure.
We had a really good time. I miss playing shows so much. But it was just, for us, it was hard keeping a group of guys. You know, like the bass player wrote everything. That's one of my best friends, Maddie. He wrote everything, so it was like easy for us to stay a band, and since he wrote everything. But it was just so hard to find people that were reliable and then go on tour. You know, so we had we were a revolving door, and I'm sure you know how it goes with a band.
Oh yeah.
Revolving door musicians, always teaching people. And at that point, we had just put out our record, our only record, like our full length, that was put out. This is so funny to me. I don't know if people like how deep you are into like modern or like current hardcore, but we were signed by our favorite local band at the time was called Robots and Empire. They used to be called When Dreams Die. I love that band, and you can probably find some of their stuff online. But those guys would wind up to become the band Mind Force, or are they called Mind Force? Yeah, it's Mind Force. They're like a pretty popular hardcore band now. It's like crazy to watch them play giant shows now. After we would play just like the shittiest dive bars in New York, but they were really good to us. They put out our record. And I think, that song was on that record. And then years later, the drummer in that video, Mike Cadnar, he would go on to play in bands, like kind of obscure, like grindy bands, like Number 12 Looks Like You, which is a band we all used to like a lot. And he started a record label, and so he reprinted all that album for us, which was pretty
That's
rad.
awesome.
So yeah, that came out again. I guess that was a year or two ago now. It's pretty cool.
Wow, dude, that's cool. So, like, how long were you guys a band for?
We probably started in 2002, and we stopped in, I think, 2015-ish, maybe? No. Earlier than that, 2012-ish, probably.
Okay.
Somewhere around
Okay.
that. We played our last show and didn't know it was our last show. So I'm hazy on exactly when it stopped, but we went for quite a while and played for a long time, toured a handful of times.
That's a very unique time to be around. You said you did a little bit of touring, or did you mostly stick around? Because you're from the New York music scene area,
Yep.
obviously. Did you mostly stick into the New York City scene? Because you guys had like a fucking solid hardcore and punk scene. Like
Yeah, dude, we
even
were
even
so
when I was
lucky.
going through, it was wild. Even like 5-10 years after you were there.
We were so lucky to be where we were because all of our favorite bands were in that area. Like
Mhm.
Dillinger was in the city, Earth Crisis was nearby, Shai Hulud had just moved to Poughkeepsie, which is near us from Florida. All Out War was right up the road. And
Nice.
then and then like Converge is just a few hours north in Boston area. Hatebreed's in Connecticut, not that far away. So we would all,
Yep.
for lack of a better word, converge in Poughkeepsie or
Yeah.
similar places in like Hartford or in
Right.
Connecticut, Worcester, which is where the Palladium was.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like
I go to
the
Worcester all
Red
the time.
Chord,
Yeah.
like we love the Red Chord. Like that band was amazing. So like everyone we loved was there, and then that scene got so big, other bands that we liked from other areas would then tour up by us. Like Between the Buried and Me would come up from North Carolina,
Yeah.
Into the Boat from Florida, all those types of bands from a Second Story Window. Um, and so we played a lot locally for a long time. And then probably by 2006, 2000, maybe 5 or 6, we would start touring. And we did some, like a good half the country. And we were
Nice.
so young. Like we would do our first, like at first actually we would do mini tours, weekend tours. We were 16, 17 in my Kia Rio. And it was like just guitars could fit, and we had a drum set we could borrow, and it was hilarious just traveling around like to Virginia to Pennsylvania to
Yeah.
play shows. August Burns Red. I remember playing at a church with them in Pennsylvania, playing
Nice.
basketball with those guys. But yeah, touring was great, and it was great because it's kind of before cell phones, so we were just
Yeah.
on the road, really unplugged. We had MapQuest printed out so we could get
Yep.
around.
I remember those
Um,
days, dude.
oh, it was so much fun. We were so like engaged, and the audience was so engaged, and it was great. And like a lot of the places we would go to, they were kind of they were not as spoiled as we were in New York because everyone was coming to us because of that scene. So
Yeah.
we'd go to certain places in Florida or Virginia, and we would be just like we were nobodies. But
Right.
there was a show. Now they had a show to go to. They would act like we were fucking the craziest band ever. So
Yeah.
some of our
Yeah.
favorite
Man.
shows were like at these weird skate parks or squatter houses. It was the best. It was the absolute best. I do miss it. And maybe at some point we toy around the idea of playing again, but we're all like just skeletons on the verge of falling apart. So it'd be tough.
Man, I understand the feeling completely to miss the stage. Trust me,
Yep.
I've been trying to start a new project. A lot of these stuff going on. Obviously, I still do music. I still write and
Yep.
record a ton of shit, but
Yep.
it is a lot of work to get a project together. Just to get 3 or 4 other guys in the same room to
Yeah,
practice
dude.
is a chore because we all have real lives now. We like the band can't be your number one priority most of the time. So
I
I
know.
get it, man.
It's tough.
But um, I mean, I hope that you guys do have some sort of reunion at some point, man. Like that'd be a blast.
Yeah,
I would love for my
we
old band
might.
to get a reunion going on.
Yeah,
So
we might. Well, we had good friends who did a reunion, or two different bands did a reunion, semi recently, and we were all there. We were like, this does look like fun to be loud again. So it's possible. I've been thinking about doing music again a lot lately, and I might do something. I don't think it'll be metal if I do like new music. I did like other projects in the past, but I really just I miss being in a room writing songs with people.
Yeah.
So I'm looking to do something soon. I've been feeling it a lot lately.
Well, I hope that that works for you, and I hope that it happens because I would love that. I would love
Hell yeah,
to hear that.
it'll be fun.
Dude, so we're coming up. It's obviously the end of the hour. Wish we could have talked a little more, but I'm definitely gonna have you on again sometime because this was a great
Yeah, dude.
conversation.
Thank you.
Tell everybody where they can find your stuff, like where they can find your book, find you on Twitter, everything you want them to know.
Sweet. Well, thanks for having me on, man. This is so much fun. We definitely got to do it again. I feel like we could do another hour on just like a hardcore band. We'll just
Oh
go
yeah,
through the bands. But
for sure.
that book we were talking about, the one in Georgia, I think the first 2 chapters are on YouTube. If you look up Tales from the Inverted World, I think I know I narrated too. I believe they're still on YouTube. So you can probably find those. But if you want to buy the book, it's at ghostofthecivilwar.com. And then the first Inverted World, which has the serial killer stories and the story about the boy who died in my house and all these different ghosts or abduction stories, that is at invertedworldbook.com. And you can find me on the internet at Shane Cashman on all those spots.
Sweet. And then you'll
Yeah,
also
man.
see him on Timcast from time to time because he's a badass.
That's right. Yeah, I appreciate
Cool,
it.
dude. Well, I'm gonna drop you backstage real quick. Just sit tight. We'll talk to you in just a second. I'm gonna give a word to the sponsor, the last sponsor of the evening. But dude, thanks again for coming on. Great guest.
Man.
Glad to have had you.
Thank you. I appreciate
yeah, I'll
it.
be right there. All right. So, guys, thank you guys for tuning in tonight. I'm gonna give you guys a quick shout out to one of our last sponsors of the evening, which is Crafton Business Services. This episode was brought to you by Crafton Business Services. Crafton is dedicated to helping entrepreneurs start, grow, and maintain their businesses by providing a wide variety of products and services to make your business more efficient, manageable, and profitable. Crafton understands how frustrating it can be getting your business off the ground. That's why they put together their business in a box solutions to turn your idea or side hustle into a fully functioning company in one place and for one transparent cost. For under $1,000, you get your corporate filing, registered agent, a logo, business cards, a marketing strategy, and an accounting consultation just to get you started off on the right foot. You get all that for just $999 plus state theft. Unless you're in New Hampshire, we don't have state taxes here. But if you have a business and Crafton can help you grow to new levels with targeted marketing campaigns, affiliate programs, website redesign, social media redesign, and much more, or they can help your business make just like a less of a headache with streamlining accounting, tax prep, and compliance. Just go to crafton.us to learn more. Use promo code FSM to help support the network. And some cool announcements. Next week, I got a good week. I got a good week going on next week. So, I've got Kevin Brady coming in on Sunday. He just produced Musician's Mansion for Jared Dines on his YouTube channel. Fantastic series. Great videographer. I'm really excited to talk to him. He's also the drummer for a really cool band. And then next Wednesday, I've got Buck Johnson. And next Sunday, I have Finn McKinty from Punk Rock MBA. Fucking stoked to have this dude. It's going to be a really great conversation. I hope you guys all have a great night. I hope you tune in for all 3 of those shows. It's going to be a blast. You guys have a good night and try to stay fucking warm. All right. See ya.